My name is Gary Laney, and for the next 20 minutes, I'm going to be talking about the potential of what the use of influence can do for power and profits in your business. So as an introduction, let me just jump into why strategic and positive influence. Well, let's talk about it for a second, because what I'm targeting today is the opportunity and the idea that business people who want to and need to develop influence in their business and personally uh, can do it and have a better life, a better business, a better outcome. But the key is about relationships. And we'll be talking a lot about that during my conversation. So the idea here is that we're trying to promote the idea that what goes around comes around. Positive-based influence emphasizes the importance of giving first to foster environments where trust can be fast-tracked, influence can be built upon deep-rooted relationships. So I'm going to start in this conversation in referring to just the basics of what influence is. So what is influence? What's the definition of it? Well, the basic definition, coming right from dictionary.com, says the capacity or power of persons or things to be a compelling force on or produce effects on the actions, behaviors, and opinions. Second definition says to have an effect on the way that someone behaves or thinks, especially by giving them an example to follow. So if I were to highlight the important words that I got out of this definition of both, actually, the first one is really talking about a compelling force that can produce results and effects on actions and behaviors and opinions. That's huge. The second definition, though, goes a step further and says it's even better yet if the influence has been given by someone who gives an example to follow. Think about that. Someone with an example that teaches you how to do something they already know and something they already do, which can help influence all those things we've just mentioned. So then how can influence affect and impact your business results? Well, a good definition I found from the Keller Institute says positive influence is the impact you have on another person. Okay, so we've already talked about that. By pointing out the strengths and virtues. Again, back to that example. It is how you are, what you do, and the power you have on others to value what is best within themselves. Positive influence helps a person to be better today than they were yesterday. Again, highlighting the important and critical words in this definition. We already know that it can impact so much of what a person receives from the influence. But the most important part is positive influence helps a person to be better today than they were yesterday. That should be the end result, should be the goal that we have in the first place. So let's take a moment and just combine a couple of words. Since I've talked about strategic, talked about influence, what happens when you pull these two words together? Well, as we know, in business, strategic influence is the art of planning. We're trying to establish influence within the public, our customers, potential customers, employee, the industry. The key to building strategic influence, however, is to know what type of presence and influence you want to have before you begin, and then to build and maintain a diverse network of relationships to grow that influence. Again, back to the relationship side of things, but now it introduces the concept of a network of relationships that can help you build and grow influence. So if we were to talk about, how this enters into the picture today, we all see every day and everything we do, social media and influence that comes through that. There are influencers that make a lot of money doing nothing but promoting products because they have a large following, they have a lot of support. Well, as you know, and I know, historically, celebrities, professional athletes, actors, actresses were the important influencer that was used in advertising and marketing to kind of get a result, and to get impact for people to pay attention to your product. Well, today, I have to say, through my experience and interviewing hundreds and hundreds of CEOs, business leaders, executives, etc., marketing leaders, that concept and the impact of that is waning, and it's becoming a challenging ROI today. And we're going to talk about why. So the difference between just having a person that has no relationship with a company that's going to promote your product and someone who is strategic to your company, well, there's lots of benefits that come with that. So let's talk about it. There are 4 things that come out of this. One, strategic influencers people that you actually get to know that have a vested interest in your company and want to promote it. Obviously, they're going to be more approachable because they care about what you're doing. Okay, that's important. Number two, they're willing to get involved in your business and your marketing strategy, as opposed to a social media influencer who will get paid for it. They'll make a mention, they'll make a post on their Twitter account, etc. You'll never have any interaction. You'll never see them. You'll never have any support from them. They'll never really get to know who you are or your company. Number three, these people, because they are influencers, they have high profile relationships, they can influence things you're trying to do. They can make high profile business introductions for you. Their value is genuine, it is strategic, and more importantly, it is long term. So positive and strategic influence, again, boils down to one fact, and that is relationships. Relationships are king in influence. So let's talk about it for a second. How do you become a highly influential leader? The approach we take at Success Masters is to focus on this strategy together, pulling these words together: positive, strategic, and influence. So what we're trying to do is give a person, give a company, the ability to have access to that influence on a strategic basis with a positive income or positive outcome, and how to utilize it. It's one thing to access it. It's one thing to learn how to utilize it. Number three is how to develop it. We want to be able to develop influence ourselves, take advantage of what's there, learn from it, and use it ourselves so that we can continue to replicate what we've begun. Number four is how to expand it. Once you begin to have influence, it's important that you learn how to, on a positive basis again, learn how to expand it so that it becomes a regular part of your strategy. And finally, is how do you use influence when it's all said and done to give back? So that's one differentiators between our strategy and others is that we don't care about just taking. We're caring about giving, and sometimes giving first, because influence, again, back to that example, shows how the integrity of the influence comes from the person themselves caring, strategically wanting to be involved, and us as a company wanting to do the same. So I want to give you a perspective. Thought it'd be interesting to take some quotes from some of the legendary people that helped engineer and develop the concept of strategic influence in the first place. If you haven't already heard of Dale Carnegie, I know there's a lot of international people in this conference, but he was an American that in the early 1900s became a force in business, and then he decided that he wanted to give back by teaching people about the importance of relationships. So I give him credit for being the father of relationship building, strategic relationship influence. He said once, and he says it in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. So it's the concept about giving first, about paying attention to the needs out there, doing something about it, and it'll be reciprocal. You'll get benefit from it. The co-founder of LinkedIn had lots to say about this. He said, try to help people first and don't keep score. If you're so worried about getting a reciprocal response from somebody you helped, you're not going to have the success that you want because you'll never get there, you'll never succeed. He also talked about beware that many good deeds get reciprocated, but again, you can't be calculated about it. Don't keep score. Think about relationships all the time, not just when you need something. Moving on, Gwyneth Paltrow, an actress, had an interesting concept about relationships. She said, success to me means having relationships that function really well. I loved how she then took it to the next level and says, without relationships of quality, you cannot be a successful person / company. So Stephen Covey, who happened to be a mentor of mine, he trained the majority of my salespeople in the early years of my career and wrote a very popular book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Again, if you've not read this, you should read it. Millions of people have. So Stephen talks about the habits of what highly effective people do. And out of 7 habits, habit number 5 is one I wanted to accentuate. that says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Again, it's not about me, it's about you. It's about me helping you first, try to understand your need, then customizing, personalizing something that makes sense for you. He goes on to say the most important ingredient that we put into any relationship is not what we say or what we do, but what we are. Who do we represent? And what are the values that we represent? The final statement is the place to begin building any relationship is inside of ourselves, inside our circle of influence in our own character. It's very, very impactful. So how do you go about developing relationships with these strategic influencers, these high profile influencers that potentially could be strategic about helping you? Well, first we must define who a strategic influencer is. So I'd like to introduce the concept of center of influence. Now, whether that's new to you or not, what most people don't know is how do you cultivate a relationship with one of these people? Let's say you have millions of people and there's one person in the center that has influence on everyone. Everyone wants that person's attention. Everyone wants to have access to that person's influence. Let's talk about it. So again, two definitions. First definition is about what a center of influence is. It says center of influence, COI, is a referral partner who provides sales leads for your business. I can go on and say the rest of that. COI is a trusted person who can influence your ideal potential client to consider hiring you for your services, buying your services. This one focuses on the individual, not the company. So as an individual, as a salesperson, as a business development person, as a marketing person, you might be able to get a person of influence, center of influence, to help you with something specifically trying to accomplish. The second one gets into more of the company strategy. So a center of influence can help you there too. Centers of influence, it says, are those people or organizations that can boost your market access and credibility through referrals, testimonials, simple undervalued word of mouth, etc. And it goes on to say these people are generally very well established, etc. The key part here, the key highlight is they can help boost your market access, give you access to markets you didn't have before. That's critical for a company. So again, let's talk about the individual again, whether you're looking at this as an individual criteria and strategy or as a company. Well, as an individual, you need to associate yourself, you need to align yourself with COIs, center of influences, that can help give you access to people that might want to buy your products. A CPA is considered probably one of the greatest examples of a COI, of a center of influence, because they deal with business owners, and they're never going to divulge what's going on in the business, but they have access to them and they can introduce you for the right reasons. So that's important, and see that there are people surrounding them within the circle of a CPA that can actually have a lot of influence. So how do you develop this relationship? How do you cultivate it with these COIs, these centers of influence? Well, I have 5 keys that I teach, and I'll just go through those quickly. The first one is you have to identify who the COIs are that relate to your business. That means you have to create a target list. Describe what your perfect COI does. So who services the same kind of client that you do, for example? You want to align with those people because they can help you with a strategy to get more clients. So you might be dealing with wealth, you might manage risk. These people need to have access to the same kind of clients, and they can introduce you and you back to them. They can help business owners manage their business, help business owners grow their business. So you need to, again, step back, say, what kind of a center of influence am I looking for that can relate to the kind of clients that I have or want? Okay, number 2 is obviously you need to build this target list. How do I create a list of those people so I can start to decide how I can get involved and in front of these people? Well, obviously you can start with Google, you can do searches and looking for these people. Here's the criteria, looking for this type of person, this kind of a business, and I'm going to try to find names of people or companies. Companies can also be centers of influence. You can also search on LinkedIn. Actually, you can get very specific on LinkedIn, and it's probably a really good tool. So that's one idea. Number 3 is that you can determine, once you have that list, that target list, how to meet and make contact. So it doesn't do any good if you know who you want to contact, got a list of them, and you have no contact. So we have to figure out a way to make connections with those people. So, the simple way, I guess, may not be the most fruitful way, is to request a connection on LinkedIn. Maybe once in a while you'll have a good connection and you'll have some interaction and something will happen. It does happen. I've had quite a few different people that I've connected with that actually turned into some business on LinkedIn. Secondly, you could leverage your business networking group. If you don't belong to a networking group, meaning a group of like-minded people that are trying to help each other in business, that meet on a regular basis, that can refer business to each other, well, you should. So that's an important thing. And networking groups are regional. They're in every community around the world. So you should look for them if you don't belong to one. Next, you can ask to be introduced. You can share this list with family, friends, your networking group, okay, your customers even, and even ask them, say, who do you know that fits this profile? And ask them and if they know someone, ask them to be introduced. So number 4 out of the 5 keys is now someone introduced us. And now this critical meeting is coming up. And if you don't have an elevator pitch, you should have one, because those first few minutes of having this introduction with a COI, with a center of influence, or the person that has great influence, it's high profile, you don't strategically plan for that appropriately, you're going to miss out. So you should be thinking all about them when you meet them. What can you do? What value can you provide them that might make them want to listen to you? You need to be present. That means you're actively listening to their answers, trying to find ways or things they're looking that they need help with that you can help them with. Ask good questions. Who are your clients that you can share with them? How do you get them how do you acquire their clients? Well, it's by getting to know them, offering value, and then they want to introduce you to people because they think you have a good service, on and on. So I'll just get you down to this last point, and that is you have to have a giver mindset. Back to that example we talked about at the beginning. End your conversation by looking for ways to help them. Introduce them to somebody. Don't ask for them to introduce you. You don't have an established relationship, and you don't deserve it at this point. So number 5 is you need to keep in contact. Pretty darn critical. You have one meeting, you think it's great, you think the world's going to continue and bring you lots of prosperity. Not going to happen unless you have continued contact and regular meetings with this person in the future. You have to develop some kind of relationship, start small, start doing something for them, gain trust, and then at some point, invite them to lunch. They may reciprocate, and all of a sudden in the future, maybe months later or years later, you have a great relationship. Again, these 5 keys, the keys about cultivating relationships with these centers of influence, is all about you getting introduced, creating a list, getting introduced, providing something of value, getting them to reciprocate when they feel comfortable and there's trust developed between the two of you. So I'll just end by saying that Dale Carnegie, once again, talking about how to win friends and influence people and or corporations, said there's 6 ways to make people like you and or your company. Number 1 is you have to be genuinely interested in other people. If you are interested in them, they're going to be interested back more often than not. Number 2, you need to be pleasant to be with. Make it a good environment for them to come into. Don't be down. Don't ever complain. Don't ever get into a mode where they don't like to be in the situation or the conversation. 3, remember that person's name. Don't ever forget it. Use it in the best way. 4, as we talked about, be an active, good listener. 5, talk in terms of the other person's interest. And 5, make the other person feel important. Do it sincerely and genuinely. So I just want to wrap this up by just saying there's a lot to this influence that people don't understand because they don't take advantage of the opportunity to develop, again, relationships. The critical piece of the strategy of everything we've talked about today is learning how to develop, learning how to cultivate, learning how to expand your relationships with people that have influence. And by the way, you don't just ask for influence, you give first and then ask for something in return once you've earned it and deserved it. Let me just end by just telling you about the concept we have, and that is the power of influence reveals how you can start with nothing and build your influence to a great degree. Someday you might become a center of influence. In today's business world, it's important than ever to have relationships and partnerships with others that can help you turn your dreams into reality. So with that, I'll just tell you, thank you for listening to me today. I hope that you've got a better perspective about what influence is. I hope you contact me at info@successmasters.com if I can give you a perspective or our company can help you in some way. And with that, I tell you thank you. My name is Gary Laney with Success Masters, and I appreciate this time with you.